Welcome back to another deep dive. Before we get started, be sure to like, subscribe, and click the bell icon so you don't miss any future deep dives. Today, we are taking a look at a really vital topic.
Yeah.
Land. But not just any land. We're diving deep into the land that supports 1/6 of humanity. India. Imagine this. India only has 2.5% of the world's land.
Wow.
But it has to support 16% of the world's population and 20% of the world's livestock.
It's mind-boggling when you think about it like that.
It really is. That's like trying to fit an elephant into a smart car.
You aren't kidding.
So how does India manage? How is all of that land used? That is what we're diving deep into today. India's land resource management, the threats facing its land resources, and some ingenious strategies for revitalization.
I'm excited to dive into this topic.
This is especially useful knowledge for our UPSC aspirants and students, but anyone who wants to understand this crucial topic should get a lot out of this episode.
I think we can all learn a lot today.
And joining me to untangle this complex web is our expert in the field.
Delighted to be here. I'm excited to discuss this topic with you today. As you mentioned, land really is the foundation of everything. I mean, it's the basis of our food security, economic growth, and even our cultural identity.
Absolutely. It's all connected. So let's kick things off with the basics. How is India's land used?
Sounds good to me.
The source material breaks down India's land use into 9 categories.
9.
9. It's
Yeah.
true.
Wow.
And it's everything. I mean, we've got forests, pastures, agricultural land, even different types of fallow land.
That's interesting.
It's kind of like a giant jigsaw puzzle of
Yeah.
how we use this precious resource. But here's where it gets interesting. The source material mentions a reporting area, which isn't the same as India's total geographical area.
Oh, right. So think of the reporting area, like the official record of land that's actively managed and accounted for. It's mainly determined by land revenue records.
Okay.
So it can fluctuate slightly based on what's being cultivated or used at any given time. But the key takeaway here, and it's a crucial one, is that India has a limited amount of land, and the demand on that land is constantly growing.
That makes you realize how crucial it is to manage every square inch wisely, right? And speaking of nuances, something that really stood out to me is the distinction between forest cover and land, classified as forest.
Yes.
It seems like semantics to me. What's the difference?
It's not just semantics. It's a good question, though. Imagine you're looking at 2 satellite images. One shows a dense, lush forest. That's forest cover. It's the actual area covered by trees and vegetation.
Okay, that makes sense.
But the other image might show a sparsely wooded area, maybe even with some shrubs and grassland.
I see.
Now, that could be land officially classified as forest by the government. You see, that land is intended for forest growth, but not quite there yet.
So it's about official designations versus reality on the ground. That makes sense. Another topic I found interesting that the source delves into is the impact of economic growth on land use, particularly agricultural land. You'd think that as India develops and the economy booms, the pressure on farmland would ease up, but the source suggests otherwise.
That's right. It seems counterintuitive, but it makes sense when you think about it.
It does. Why is that?
It's a fascinating paradox.
It really is.
While agriculture's share of the GDP might shrink as other sectors grow, India's population keeps increasing. More people means more mouths to feed, and more mouths to feed means a higher demand for agricultural output. Think of it like this. Even if a smaller slice of the economic pie goes to agriculture, we still need to produce the same amount of food, or even more, to feed everyone. And it is that relentless demand that keeps the pressure on agricultural lands so high.
So it's not just about how much land we have, but how we use it. And that brings us to a rather alarming topic, land degradation.
Yes, this is a serious issue.
The source material doesn't sugarcoat it. We're talking soil erosion, chemical imbalances, loss of biodiversity.
Right.
It even uses the term desertification, which sounds straight out of a dystopian novel.
It's a stark reality, unfortunately. Imagine the fertile topsoil that nourishes our crops is literally being washed away by rain or blown away by the wind. That's physical degradation. Then there's chemical degradation, where the land becomes too salty or loses vital nutrients. It can even be contaminated by pollutants. It's like the land is losing its nutritional value. And then there's biological degradation. Think of it like the land losing its life force. Forests shrink, species disappear, and the intricate web of life starts to unravel.
The source paints a pretty bleak picture. It cites the State of India's Environment 2017 report, which says almost 30% of India is either degraded or facing desertification. And get this, 26 out of 29 states have reported an increase in desertification over the past decade.
Those are some scary stats.
They are indeed.
And that's why it's crucial to understand what desertification really is and why it should matter to every Indian, not just farmers. It's not just about land turning into a barren wasteland, though that's part of it. It's about a decline in the land's ability to support life, plant life, animal life, human life.
So it impacts everything.
Absolutely. Desertification is a slow, creeping disaster that can disrupt entire ecosystems and upend livelihoods.
So desertification isn't some far-off problem. It's happening right here, right now. But what exactly causes it? The source mentions a whole laundry list of factors: water and wind erosion, human settlements, vegetation degradation, and even salinity. It's like death by 1,000 cuts for the land.
Each of those factors definitely plays a role in this complex process. Let's take deforestation, for example. When forests are cleared for agriculture or development, the soil loses its protective cover. It's like stripping away the Earth's sunscreen.
Wow, that's a good analogy.
And the exposed soil becomes vulnerable to erosion by wind and rain. Overgrazing is another culprit. Too many animals grazing in one area can strip away vegetation, leaving the soil bare and vulnerable. And then there's salinity. Improper irrigation practices can lead to a buildup of salts in the soil, making it unusable for growing crops.
It's like adding too much salt to a dish,
Yeah.
right? It makes it inedible.
Exactly.
And it's not just about the land itself, right?
Yeah.
The source highlights the domino effect on the entire ecosystem.
That's exactly right. Imagine a once fertile region slowly turning into a dust bowl. Sand dunes start encroaching on farmland. Topsoil, which is like the lifeblood of agriculture, gets washed away, carrying precious nutrients with it. Water resources start dwindling as the water table drops. And with depleted resources and harsher conditions, the region becomes more vulnerable to droughts, further exacerbating the problem. It's a vicious cycle. Hashtag TTS The Deep Dive, episode 2024-1203, part 2 of 3. It really is. It makes you think. But before we get too bogged down in doom and gloom, let's shift gears and talk about what India is doing to fight back against land degradation and desertification.
Yes. Let's get to some solutions.
The source material highlights a multi-pronged approach that combines modern science with ancient wisdom.
Okay, so there's some hope on the horizon. Tell me more.
Think of it like a toolbox filled with different instruments, each designed to address a specific aspect of land degradation. You've got land and water management techniques like rainwater harvesting and efficient irrigation, which help conserve precious water and prevent soil erosion. And then there are strategies for protecting existing vegetation and promoting sustainable grazing and farming practices.
So it's like we're giving the land the chance to, breathe and regenerate.
Exactly. It's a paradigm shift, really. We're moving away from practices that exploit and deplete our land resources towards a more holistic, sustainable approach. And here's where things get really interesting. The source emphasizes the importance of empowering local communities. It's not just about top-down government policies, it's about recognizing that the people who live and work on the land are often the best stewards of its resources.
That makes sense. After all, they have the most to gain from protecting their land and the most to lose if it degrades. How do we actually empower these communities, though?
I think of it as a two-pronged approach. First, we need to provide them with the knowledge and tools they need to manage their land sustainably. This could include training in soil conservation techniques, water management, sustainable agriculture.
Right.
And then second, we need to create opportunities for alternative livelihoods that are less reliant on traditional land-intensive practices.
So we're giving people options, ways to earn a living that don't put further pressure on the land.
That's the goal. The source mentions some fascinating examples. Imagine a village in a dryland area where traditional agriculture is becoming increasingly difficult due to water scarcity. Now, picture them setting up a dryland aquaculture system, raising fish in tanks, or perhaps they start cultivating high-value crops in greenhouses, using less water and maximizing yields. Maybe they even develop tourism-related activities showcasing their unique culture and natural heritage.
Those are some great ideas. It's about adapting to the challenges and finding creative solutions that work for both people and the environment. But let's zoom out a bit and talk about the bigger picture for a second. The source mentions NTI Aayog, the government's think tank,
Yes.
and their vision for land management in India. What's their take on all of this?
Well, NTI recognizes the critical role of land in India's development, for sure. They've laid out some pretty ambitious goals for the future. They're really pushing for reforms that make it easier for people to lease land legally and securely.
So a landowner who can't farm their land could easily lease it to someone who can?
Exactly. It maximizes productivity. They're also advocating for consolidation of fragmented land holdings, which can make farming more efficient and profitable. And crucially, they're championing the creation of a digitized integrated land record system.
Yes, the digital revolution. We've talked about the Digital India Land Records Modernization Program, or DILRMP,
Mm.
before.
Right.
What's so revolutionary about digitized land records, though? I'm not sure I fully understand.
Well, imagine a world where you can access all the information about a piece of land ownership details, boundaries, land use history with just a few clicks.
That would be amazing.
That's the power of DLRMP. It's about creating a transparent and efficient system that reduces land disputes, prevents fraud, and empowers people with secure property rights.
Okay, I can see why that's appealing. It's like taking a dusty old filing cabinet and transforming it into a sleek, searchable database.
Yeah.
But the source also points out a rather striking statistic. While agriculture uses the bulk of India's land, it contributes less than 18% to the GDP.
Mm.
That seems like a bit of a mismatch, doesn't it?
It does raise important questions about optimizing land use for sure. While agriculture will always be crucial for India, we need to explore ways to increase its productivity, but also consider alternative land uses that can contribute more to the overall economy.
Like diversifying our investment portfolio.
Yeah, exactly. So how do we overcome these land resource constraints and create a more balanced and sustainable system?
Yeah. Oh.
Well, the source mentions several key areas for reform.
Like what?
Well, it starts with tackling those restrictive tenancy laws that we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
Outdated regulations make it difficult for landowners to lease out their land, leading to fallow land and underutilization.
Right.
It's like having a car sitting idle in the garage when someone else could be using it to get around. We need to streamline these laws and make land leasing a more viable option.
And what about the problem of fragmented land holdings?
Mm.
It's hard to imagine modern, efficient agriculture happening on tiny, scattered plots of land.
Absolutely. Land consolidation is definitely key to unlocking the potential of Indian agriculture. Imagine combining those small, fragmented plots into larger contiguous units. This allows for better irrigation, easier mechanization, and economies of scale, ultimately boosting productivity and profitability for farmers.
Those are some great points.
Yeah.
And then there's the crucial issue of managing our forest resources more effectively.
Hmm.
We've talked about protecting existing forests, but what about restoring degraded forest lands?
That's where the Forest Rights Act comes in.
Okay.
It recognizes the traditional rights of forest dwellers and tribal communities over forest resources and empowers them to participate in forest management. Think of it as giving the people who have lived in and depended on forests for generations a voice in their protection and restoration. We also need to invest in sustainable forestry practices that balance timber production with the conservation of biodiversity and ecosystem services.
So it's about recognizing that forests are more than just timber factories. They're vital ecosystems that provide a whole range of benefits, from clean water and air to carbon sequestration and biodiversity.
Exactly. And speaking of valuable data, remember the Wastelands Atlas of India we discussed earlier?
Yeah.
This incredible resource, which was created using satellite imagery, provides a detailed map of India's wasteland, categorized by type and severity of degradation.
So like a roadmap for revitalizing these often overlooked land resources.
Exactly. It identifies areas where we can reclaim land, plant trees, and bring those degraded ecosystems back to life. But let's not forget the human element in all of this. The source mentions the Agriculture Census 2015-16, which gives us valuable insight into the structure of land holdings in India.
Oh, interesting.
It's fascinating, Beta. The census classifies land holdings into different size categories, from marginal to large, giving us a snapshot of how land ownership is distributed across the country. And there are some surprising findings. For instance, Nagaland, not a state known for vast agricultural lands, actually has the highest average holding size, followed by Punjab.
Really? I would have guessed it would be one of the more densely populated states.
Yeah.
What accounts for this unexpected pattern?
Well, remember that the average holding size is just one piece of the puzzle. It reflects a complex interplay of historical, social, and economic factors. Different regions have different land tenure systems, inheritance practices, and patterns of agricultural development. Understanding these variations is key to developing effective land management policies that are tailored to specific contexts.
So it's not a one-size-fits-all approach. What works in Nagaland might not work in Kerala.
Exactly. Land management is not just about hectares and yields, it's about people, livelihoods, and cultural values. And that brings us back to the importance of technology in empowering people and creating a more transparent and equitable land management system. Hashtag TTS The Deep Dive episode 2024-1203, part 3 of 3. It really is a powerful tool, and it brings us to this exciting frontier of technology and land management.
It really feels like we're on the cusp of a revolution here.
Absolutely, I think so too. We've already talked about the transformative potential of things like DLRMP and drones, but there's so much more on the horizon.
Like what?
One area that I think is particularly exciting is precision agriculture.
Precision agriculture. It sounds so futuristic. What exactly does that entail?
Well, imagine a farmer who can monitor the health of their crops down to the individual plant level.
Wow.
Using sensors and drones, they can precisely target irrigation and fertilization, making sure that each plant gets exactly what it needs. No more, no less.
Oh, okay.
That's the power of precision agriculture. It's about using technology to optimize every aspect of farming, from planting to harvesting.
So it's like taking the guesswork out of farming and replacing it with data-driven decisions.
That's a great way to put it. Precision agriculture relies on a suite of technologies. Sensors, drones, GPS, and sophisticated data analytics. All of this comes together to gather real-time information about soil conditions, crop health, even microclimates within a field.
Wow, it's like having a high-tech control center for your farm. But how does this translate into real benefits for farmers?
Well, the benefits are multifaceted. By precisely targeting resources, farmers can significantly reduce their water and fertilizer usage.
Yeah.
This minimizes waste and helps the environment. Imagine a field where only the areas that need water are irrigated, conserving precious water resources. Precision agriculture can also help farmers detect pest and disease outbreaks early on, enabling targeted interventions and minimizing crop losses.
So it's not just about increasing yields, it's about doing more with less, right?
Right.
Making farming more sustainable and resilient in the face of challenges like climate change.
Precisely. And this is especially relevant for a country like India, where water scarcity and soil degradation are such major concerns.
Absolutely.
Precision agriculture really does offer a way to increase agricultural productivity while also minimizing environmental impact.
Okay, I'm convinced. But how is precision agriculture actually being implemented in India? Are we talking about large, tech-savvy farms, or can smallholder farmers benefit from this technology too?
That's the million-dollar question. And the answer is encouraging. There are numerous initiatives underway to make precision agriculture accessible to farmers of all scales. Agricultural universities and research institutions are actively experimenting with these techniques, developing customized solutions for different crops and regions. Private companies are also stepping up, offering precision agriculture services to farmers, providing them with access to the technology, the data, and the expertise they need.
So it sounds like a win-win situation. Farmers get access to cutting-edge technology and the environment benefits from more sustainable practices. But let's be realistic. Technology isn't a magic bullet, is it? I mean, there are always social and economic considerations.
You're absolutely right. One of the key challenges is bridging the digital divide. We need to make sure that the benefits of precision agriculture reach smallholder farmers who might not have the resources or technical know-how to adopt these technologies on their own.
Right, so it's about making technology accessible and affordable, and also giving farmers the training and support they need to use it effectively.
Exactly. It's also about fostering an ecosystem of innovation and collaboration,
Right.
where researchers, entrepreneurs, and farmers all work together to develop and implement solutions that are tailored to the specific needs and challenges of Indian agriculture.
That's great. It sounds like a multifaceted approach, combining technological advancements with social and economic empowerment. But let's not limit our discussion to just agriculture. Technology is transforming other aspects of land management as well, isn't it?
It absolutely is. Think about forestry, for example. Remote sensing data from satellites can be used to monitor deforestation, track illegal logging activities, and even assess the health of forests. It's like having eyes in the sky. It provides us with a real-time view of what's happening to our forests.
So it's about using technology to protect our forests and manage them more sustainably. What about land use planning, especially as our cities grow? How is technology changing the way we design and manage cities?
That's where Geographic Information Systems, or GIS, come in. GIS allows planners to analyze vast amounts of spatial data, create detailed maps, and model different scenarios to optimize land use, infrastructure development, and transportation systems. Imagine being able to simulate the impact of a new highway or housing development on traffic patterns, air quality, and even social equity.
It's like having a crystal ball. We can see the consequences of our planning decisions before we even break ground.
Exactly. And as our cities grapple with challenges like population density, traffic congestion, and climate change, GIS and other data-driven approaches will become even more essential for creating sustainable and livable urban environments.
It's incredible to think about the possibilities that technology opens up for land management. But I think it's important to remember that technology is just a tool. It's how people use it. It's the policies that guide its development and the values that shape its application that ultimately determine whether it's used for good or for ill.
I agree. Technology can amplify our best intentions or our world impulses. We need to approach it with wisdom, foresight, and a deep understanding of the complex social and ecological systems we're trying to manage.
So we're talking about using technology responsibly and ethically, right?
Mm.
In a way that benefits all members of society, not just a select few.
Precisely. It's about making sure that the technological revolution in land management leads to a more equitable, sustainable, and prosperous future for India.
I think that is the perfect note to wrap up on today. We've explored the challenges facing India's land resources, the innovative solutions being implemented, and the transformative power of technology. But most importantly, we've highlighted the human element at the heart of it all. The farmers, the forest dwellers, the urban planners, the policymakers who are shaping the future of this vital resource. Remember, folks, managing land isn't just about hectares and yields. It's about people, livelihoods, and ultimately the future of our planet. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Be sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on future episodes.